Well, they meet again. It's the Pacers, it's the Bucks. They might play 24 times in 2 seasons, and this one is to get out of the first round. It's a Pacers Bucks Locked On crossover preview today on Locked On Pacers and Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On NBA Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, we've seen this one before. Here it is again. The Indiana Pacers and the Milwaukee Bucks. It's not one of their 13 regular season meetings the last 2 seasons. It's not the NBA Cup semifinals. It's the first round again, and it's going to be awesome. I'm Tony East. I host Locked On Pacers and the Locked On Bucks crew. We have a lot to talk about. How's it going, guys?
It's going good. I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, it's hey, we got Giannis this time, so it's going great.
Yeah, of course, not both stars, because the fate of the universe apparently will not allow that to be a thing. We'll talk about Dame in a second, but of course it's Pacers Bucks, guys, right? What else? How else could this season have ended for either team? After last year, the Pacers dominated the regular season. This time, it was one miraculous shot away from being 4-0 Bucks. It's just fate. The brewing rivalry is here.
It is. And this was one I was hoping for because I like the rivalry aspect of it. I like teams facing each other often, and they're in the same division, and divisions don't tend to mean much in the NBA. So seeing the same teams getting into the playoffs is kind of fun, especially since the Pacers are returning the exact same cast from last year. So for Bucks fans looking for revenge, you can see the pathway forward here.
I didn't have quite the strong feelings Camille and a lot of our audience did, for reasons we'll get into throughout the show here. But yeah, I mean, the division importance. I mean, look at the Central Division. We'll see what happens with the Bulls as we record this, but maybe 5 teams in the playoffs from that Central Division.
Love a good Midwest feud. The nicest people, their basketball teams all hate each other. It's funny to think about the differences between this year and last year's series, because obviously there's this giant Greek guy who is the thing. We'll talk a lot about him today. But the Bucks are so different even beyond that it feels like a totally different series to me, even minus Dame, in a way that's going to be really fascinating. But start with Giannis, obviously. But what to you guys are the big differences about the Bucks this year that, one, Pacers people need to know, and 2, will make this a totally different series if you think it'll be different from last year?
Justin, you want to kick us off here? I know something that we talked about a bit.
Yeah, I mean, Giannis, obviously, but the fact that the Bucks are not one of the worst defenses in the league is probably the biggest starting point here. Camille and I talked about it during some of our shows this week. I talked about it on several of our post-game shows and radio shows too. Go back to that series last year and look at the players the Bucks were playing in that series, and especially their bench. That's
on
been
the perimeter mostly.
I mean, Danilo Gallinari was seeing minutes in that series. You were relying on Pat Beverly in the starting lineup. It was Jay Crowder, right? It was an old, slow roster that couldn't defend. And I mean, that was the big advantage the Pacers had. You knew they're going to run, and there's nothing we can do against this. So the defense being much improved is a big part, but having a reliable bench that has now kind of all of a sudden become this is the bench, but this is also the quasi starters, because these are the guys that we think Doc is going to lean on
every game.
Yeah, they have been, and they've been a really big difference to this Bucks team. I mean, the Bucks have the best 3-point shooting bench in the NBA right now, with Gary Trent Jr., Bobby Portis Jr., Kevin Porter Jr., who has been playing some exceptional ball since getting to Milwaukee in comparison to what we saw with him at the Clippers, and AJ Green. And then on top of that, too, in the starting lineup, as we've currently seen it constructed, with Taurean Prince out there being able to knock down, catch and shoot shots, putting the ball on the floor a little bit. The Kyle Kuzma piece of it has been a little bit of an adventure at times, but the value that he brings to the Bucks, I think, is more on the defensive end so far than what we've seen offensively. But overall, I just think this Bucks team this year has more options than what they were able to throw out at the Pacers last year. Even Jericho Simmons being healthy, I'm not sure how many minutes he'll actually get during the series, but to have the option to play a defensive, versatile, switching big is going to be really huge for the Bucks. Just the options piece of it, I think, is really big for Milwaukee.
Yeah, it's fascinating. You both led with 2 things that I have talked about already. One is that, like I remember thinking in the middle of the season last year when the Bucks traded campaign for Patrick Beverley, like, oh, they did that because their perimeter defense sucks and they need someone who can guard. Maybe Patrick Beverley can have an impact in the series. He did, not a good impact, but he impacted the series, certainly, yes. Things happened because of Patrick Beverley. But like Beasley and Crowder, all those guys like just couldn't keep any Pacers ball handler in front of them, right? So the Pacers lived in the paint. And hey, look, when you have the best offense in the league besides the Celtics, you're going to score a lot when you can get in the paint. That will not be as easy this year. They still scored pretty well against the Bucks this year outside of that December game when the zone just destroyed them. But I do think it will be more challenging for them to do that, especially as TJ McConnell has seen a decline this year in his effectiveness. But it's going to be a lot on Haliburton and Mathurin and Nembhard to keep up paint pressure against better defenders. And that's not easy against the Bucks. And yeah, the shooting part, I think, is the scariest part because of the Giannis passing element where he just like dimes these guys up across the court and you can't double him as easily in the post and all these guys are drilling everything. Gary Trent, has he missed a three against the Pacers like this whole season? It feels like he's like 60 for 60. So those two things are like huge, scary switches in the Bucks personnel around the fact that Giannis is playing this time, which is crazy because up until last year, I think the Bucks had won 12 in a row that Giannis played against the Pacers. Like I think everybody in the Central Division has been dealing with that. So there's a lot of little challenges that will make this challenging, obviously, for the Pacers this year in a way that it wasn't last year, even though they still have, obviously, their own advantages that we'll get to.
Yeah, I mean, Gary Trent Jr., luckily for you guys, the first game against the Bucks came out, or luckily for the Bucks, wasn't in the first 10 games of the season. Otherwise, he would have been missing everything. But yeah, that's been one of the big stories. The Bucks have been able to keep up and push the pace. Their perimeter defense has been much improved. There's a lot of minutia and interesting matchups to get into with what we saw in that lone loss for the Bucks and Taurean Prince taking on the Tyrese Haliburton role. I don't know that I'd expect that or a heavy dose of that given what we saw the last time that happened. But I think the big thing is you kind of toe a line where I'm going to say something, but I'm not going all the way over the line here. And a lot of Bucks fans have kind of leapt over that line. Interesting to see some of the discourse. I am by no means saying the Bucks are better off without Damian Lillard because they're not. But with Dame out and looking at what the matchup was going to be for the Bucks, either the Pacers or the Knicks, you need some help defensively in the backcourt. And Ryan Rollins and Kevin Porter Jr. are both much more suited to take on that challenge than Damian Lillard was.
They are. And for the Bucks, I think this is a series, and to Justin's point, not overlooking the Pacers, but this is a first round series against the Pacers where it feels like Giannis being the lone superstar with how the rest of the team is constructed should be enough for the Bucks to come out of this first round series victorious. And in large part why I have that confidence, it lies in Giannis. Like Giannis has been a problem for the Pacers for the last 4 or 5 years. And if we
no, like 10 or 11. Longer.
Even if you just isolate the numbers for the last 2 years, because this Pacers team, as we see this year, is very similar to last year. Like Giannis is averaging like 37 points a game against the Pacers over the last 2 years, and his ability to get downhill, his playmaking, and how he's been playing the last few weeks to end the season, getting that rhythm of being the primary playmaker, I think is going to show up big for the Bucks.
Yeah, Giannis is just terrifying. I mean, and they had this like wall thing they did last year and sometimes this year, you know, and I think this will happen at times, not all the time in this series. You guys know about it, but it's one guy on him, 2 guys just to the side, like make him pass. And I remember being in Indy in the game, he talked about like, we got to think about this loss and we're getting freaky. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. You know, and that was the game where he said, yeah, I've seen that coverage before, but like I'm naturally pass first. So I give it up. And at the time I thought, I don't think of Giannis as pass first, but that's interesting. And then this year he's like, oh yeah, he totally is. Like he just carves up that coverage and his passing's been better with better play finishers. And so I think not only is Giannis capable of going for, name your number, 30, 35, 40, whatever, against like literally any defender in the NBA. But if he's better against those kinds of coverages, the Bigs are going to have to get really creative. And I think that is going to be a challenge for them defensively because, as you guys have seen, when he won the Bucks a championship and in many other series along the way, Giannis is really good at busting up all types of freaky defenses.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, Giannis is, I think sometimes that his like basketball IQ is underappreciated because Giannis normally can see something in the first quarter, kind of get an idea of what that look is. And as the game goes on, you see how he's able to adapt to what's being thrown at him because he's seen a lot of different coverages, like that wall you mentioned when the Raptors first unveiled that back in 19 in the playoffs. It was hard for him to get past that because the passing wasn't there yet, but he has worked diligently at that. And he's a pretty good playmaker now. So it's interesting seeing teams throw different things at him and seeing how he takes the game to really figure that out. And normally by the end, he's cooking.
And as the Pacers saw in December, he can just turn around and shoot a mid-ranger over the top sometimes too.
Mm-hmm.
It's been the biggest part of his game this year, and I would imagine that's what the Pacers are going to say, and any team for that matter. All right, continue to hit those in the playoffs.
I do not want to be the team betting on or against any sort of him doing anything. Let's talk about the Pacers in just a second. Before we do so, let's talk about two wonderful groups of people. First up, Skims. When I found out Skims was making underwear for men, I was intrigued. I've heard so much about their quality from friends and family, so I had to give it a try. And let me tell you, it lives up to the hype. I, like many, have had issues with underwear, whether it's fit or comfort or just finding the right style for me. Skims changed all that. Their men's line offers something for everyone, from boxer briefs to classic briefs, all designed with the perfect balance of comfort and style, like their cotton brief. Might be TMI, but I'm a briefs guy through and through. Finding the perfect yet classic brief can be quite the challenge. Luckily, Skims comes through with their cotton briefs. It's everything you love about a classic fit of a cotton brief with the maxed out comfort and breathability only Skims can do. You've got to check it out. Shop Skims Men's, at skims.com/LockedOnNBA and in Skims stores. Let them know we sent you. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select Locked On Pacers or Locked On Bucks from the drop-down menu that follows. Let's also talk about game time. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Here they come. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena. And with Game Time, you can be a part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets. Even when demand is sky high, prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. Many people use Game Time because of those last-minute deals and saving 60%, but also their all-in pricing means no surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you pay. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create a Game Time account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. It's the playoffs, and we're crossing it over here on Locked On Pacers and Locked On Bucks. There's a lot of differences for the Bucks. They don't have Chris Middleton. They might not have Damian Lillard. We should have talked about that a little more. They have Kyle Kuzma now. They have an entirely different bench. The Pacers are very similar. They do not have as many differences. They will have the exact same starting five as last year's series with the Bucks. They will have at least two, maybe three different bench players. I'm very curious, actually, how they'll build out their second unit. But what makes the Pacers different is they can actually guard now. Above average in defensive rating, top 10 since January 1st. I wouldn't call it like a super strength for the Pacers, but like the Bucks, after a slow start to the season, they've been really solid on both offense and defense, and that is why they are more threatening. What questions do you guys have about the Pacers and their changes or challenges this year?
I know one for me, you kind of alluded to it with the lineup. I know the Pacers are one of like three teams that have one of the deepest benches with guys getting at least 15 minutes per game. When you think playoffs, you always think of the playoff rotation shortening and everybody's not going to be able to play. So when you think of the Pacers and who will be the main rotation guys, like who do you think is going to actually be the bench unit for the Pacers? Or do you think it might be a situation where, as we've talked about with the Bucks, it might just be dependent on how the series is going to figure out which levers you really want to pull here?
Yeah, they're very fluid with all that. Like last year, they played 10 guys in game one in Milwaukee, like Doug McDermott and Jalen Smith played. And then no one played more than 24 minutes besides their top 8 the rest of the series, right? So I think like the Bucks, both these teams will be very reactionary in a good way with how they manage their bench. And the Pacers are usually proud of the fact that they play fast and use their depth to keep energy up with guys. And that's why they play some of their bench players a little more than other teams. But that might be hard this year, right? Do they try to go small again like last year because there was no backup center? If Jericho Sims plays, then have to play Thomas Bryant. That's a new element. He wasn't even on the Pacers for last year's series, but he's been up and down with his shot. His defense has been poor. Ben Shepherd played a lot last year in the playoffs for the Pacers, shot it well against the Bucks. He can guard. He can really move. His shot has kind of vanished the last couple months, right? He's been probably the 10th or 11th even guy for the Pacers. But the inserted element certainly will be Benedict Mathurin, who maybe had his worst game of the season on defense in Milwaukee in the most recent meeting between these two teams, but also has been awesome against the Bucks a lot in the last 2 years. Granted, some of that was against the flimsy perimeter defense Bucks that we already talked about today. But in theory of what the playoffs is, if the game slows down even a little, that type of player is really good, right? Guys who can size up a defense, evaluate an ISO situation and draw a foul or score. And so there's a lot of optimism in Indy about him being a guy who can rise up and be very valuable in the series, especially on that offensive end. And he can guard the ball pretty well. He had that insane strip on Giannis to win the Pacers the first game against the Bucks last year. Obviously, he's not going to guard Giannis one-on-one, but like he's shown that he can fight in those matchups. So it might be different with just Ben Shepherd out and Benedict Mathurin in, and maybe they mix in a Jarris Walker because they'll need size to defend Giannis in a way they didn't need to do last year. But it's largely going to be similar. And just how much they use their depth will depend on, I think, the stuff we already talked about, how the series is going and what it requires. These two coaches have shown that throughout the years.
Yeah, I guess I'm curious too about the Giannis matchup. I mean, I don't think there's
me too.
I don't. It's not as simple as looking at this Bucks roster and saying, well, there's no Dame for now. And Camille and I have kind of talked about. I'm of the mindset you just have to assume he's not back.
Yeah,
if he comes back at some point, great. But
yeah, look, okay, I'm going to address my audience and maybe yours as well with this. After last year with the like daily Giannis updates and like the Chris Middleton this season, like, yeah, he's going to be ready by opening night. I just don't believe.
I'm sorry, Chris Middleton this season or Chris Middleton each of the last 3 to 4 seasons?
I'm just not. I don't believe any of the injury updates. I don't care. If he's going to play, I will tell you, listeners. If not, just assume Dame is not playing. Okay, that's the end of that is the end of that.
Yeah, and I mean, I've seen a lot of if there's no Dame and there's these role players who have played well this season, but still role players, okay, then just make them score and take Giannis out of it. I think that's to your point of what Giannis said before, too. That's where Giannis has been at his best. I mean, we've seen a 17 or 15 assist, a 20 assist game for him here, and the Bucks have kind of reshaped the roster too with guys that some of them it's still wait and see that we do have to see that extended look in the playoffs, but other guys that have done this in the postseason and are proven that it's not like when you're going into where you were last year. So I think there's a lot of confidence there of the guys are going to hit shots when Giannis gets them those looks. And then you start to see the other one of, okay, well then just let Giannis score and take the shooters out of it and just say, if Giannis is going to score, Giannis is going to score. And I personally hope that's what Indiana does. I don't think Rick Carlisle is that dumb, because if Giannis does that, if Giannis scores 40, the Bucks are going to win more often than not that game that he's in. And it also means Indiana's not getting out in transition. It gives the Bucks a chance to set the defense.
Yeah, so one, like the game the Bucks won last year in the regular season was like, oh, Giannis had 60 something, and like we saw that happen. And I went and looked, and like they're 4-1 when he scores 40 plus this year. Like, yeah, if he scores a lot, the Bucks are really good. No way I'm doing that. I'm hoping Variance helps me out by trying to let other guys go crazy. If I lose to role players, I lose to role players, right? Like it seems obvious to me, but a lot of people have suggested what you said. I'm like, have you watched him before? Like that doesn't make any sense to me. And the game the Bucks won in December is my poster for that one, because if you guys remember that game, the Pacers were up 19 in the third quarter, and they were like one hard punch away from the Bucks probably just being like, okay, we lose. And instead, they got in this zone defense that was getting a lot of stops, and then Giannis was scoring a lot, and it was just this constant snowball effect of basket, set the zone, get a stop, score, set the, and it just never ended. If you let Giannis score over and over, and the Pacers are taking the ball out of the net, like you said, like that won't work. I don't know. Like people are going to ask, who should they put on Giannis? Does it matter? Like, not that it doesn't matter. It does matter. You need to choose the best answer, but like, it's going to be multiple guys doing several different things. Right. And so it's more to me, the interesting part is like, not to slam on anybody, but like, would you guys say Ryan Rollins is the worst shooter? Probably who's going to play in the series off the ball? Maybe Kuzma. I don't know.
Kuzma.
Yeah. Like who's guarding those guys? Who's going to be doing a lot of the helping guarding Giannis, right? That is more interesting to me when you consider how they'll match this up, because they're going to have to send him multiple guys and different coverages throughout the game. I just listened to Tom Thibodeau talk about how the Knicks will defend Cade. He said, we can't just defend him the same way over and over, right? We got to send different coverages at him and make it confusing, even if it's something he's seen before. Make him think for like a second, just disrupt the flow, just for, that's what the Pacers are going to have to do. It's easier said than done, like everything ever. But like, I don't know that I'm like so concerned who they start on him to start the series. I think it's more about the other ways they'll be defending him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I know the Bucks starting lineup has been maligned at times by a lot of Bucks fans, especially when we talk about what that second unit has done, closing games and how good they've been.
Yeah.
But Doc has said routinely he likes that group starting because you're getting minutes with Giannis right off the bat, and Taurean Prince and Ryan Rollins are both very good spot-up shooters and both defenders. So he likes what they get there to start the game, and then you kind of figure out when's the right spot to bring the rest of them in. Kyle Kuzma, I would imagine, is going to be given a lot of dare shots in this series. So there is a fine line of how many of those you can take.
Fortunately, the series is not in the bubble.
Fortunately for you, unfortunately for the Bucks, we've seen that number reach as high as 13 threes in a game that he's attempted. Wow. So I think, wow is certainly a reaction to it. I think you would love to keep it like 4, 5. That's our limit. And then figure out how do you attack on some of those open looks that you're going to be getting there. But to me, the big one is I'm really curious for the Giannis and Pascal Siakam matchups, because I would assume the Bucks are going to put Giannis on Siakam. Giannis himself has talked about, I can't really go quite as hard defensively because of what I'm being asked to do on the offensive side. And I mean, I suppose you could try other looks like a Taurean Prince and Kyle Kuzma. I wonder if they start with Kyle Kuzma on Tyrese Haliburton, if they go with some of those looks early in the game. But both Siakam and Giannis, I think, are going to be asked to do a lot defensively against each other respectively. And that's the one thing that does give you pause is, well, the Pacers do have other options that they can lean on for offense if that's going to take some out of Pascal Siakam. The Bucks, they got shooters, but they're not quite in that same role of finding creators other than a guy like Kevin Porter Jr.
Yeah, I bet the series starts the way you said, with Giannis on Pascal and Brook on Myles. That front court, like flippity-floppity matchup-wise, last year was like a huge part of it because of the Bobby Portis of it all and all that. You would kind of just tease this. Who do you think guards tie? Do you think it's Kuzma? Do you think it's Rollins? How do you think they'll handle it?
I think we'll see both. I do wonder if we see Kuzma to start, but given that there's no Dame, I do kind of assume we're going to see Ryan Rollins start the game on him. What that means for Taurean Prince, where you put Kuzma, maybe it is Kuzma that you put on Pascal Siakam then. But I think Doc is going to be inclined to start with Ryan Rollins on him. And then what we've seen throughout the course of the back half of the year, and we saw it a little bit with Taurean Prince. I don't remember if it was the Pacers game in Milwaukee, the last one, or a couple other of those matchups. But we've seen Doc put Taurean Prince on that type of player. And if it's not working, he's at least recognized and said, okay, now we're going to go to Kyle Kuzma on this matchup instead.
And that might sound funny to say we're going to Kyle Kuzma for this matchup, but Kyle Kuzma's defense has been something that has surprised me during his time here in Milwaukee. And we've seen Doc utilize him as like, hey, we didn't show this look throughout the first half, but third quarter coming out, we want to utilize this look. And part of it initially, it was talked about was just Kuzma's conditioning and getting himself in the shape to be playing on a team that's contending for the playoffs, trying to get to a championship. It was a different level of conditioning that Kuz admitted himself that he was not accustomed to while he was playing with Washington. So I'm really curious to see how Kuz is utilized in this series defensively, because with his length and his size, especially when the Bucks roll with a Kuz, Giannis, Lopez, or whatever other big you want to put in their front court, the Bucks can have a lot of size out there, especially if Taurean Prince is the nominal 2 guard.
I and many don't view Kuzma as a great defender, but if you're big with size and you're playing on a connected defensive team, you can certainly have a positive impact, and the Bucks could just go zone and ruin everything the Pacers do, like they did twice this season. X Factors, series predictions coming up, but before we talk about any of that stuff, did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. Endless entertainment. With 4K streaming, you can watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes as well at your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. It's affordable and portable gaming. If you have lots of hardcore gaming experience, this could be the way for you to do it with a Fire TV 4K stick. It's a game changer. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Lockdown to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and the Fire TV Cubes 3rd Gen. Back here, crossing it over for Locked On Pacers and Locked On Bucks. Both of you, we know Giannis is going to be awesome. They have other talented players on the Bucks, but who is your non-star player X factor for Milwaukee that could swing this series?
I think for me, it's a few different ways you can go, but I'm going to go with Kevin Porter Jr. We kind of hinted on the whys behind that, but without Damian Lillard in the lineup, the Bucks do need that shot creation. And KPJ has put up some numbers and shown an aptitude to be able to go out there and get his own shot. Initially, when he came over to the Bucks, he was kind of like that stopgap guy who would be on the floor when either Dame and Giannis are off, or Dame's just off, or Giannis is just off, so he can have the ball in his hands a bit more and create from there. But over the last few weeks, you've seen the chemistry between him and Giannis really grow. And the ability to create shots is going to be of the utmost importance for this Milwaukee Bucks team. So Kevin Porter Jr. is somebody who I think is a big X factor. And then like another teaser, I would say Bobby Portis Jr. For a lot of the same reasons, getting to it different ways, but another big who can also be a little bit more mobile.
KPJ is one that I'm like, oh man, I talked about him a lot on my show yesterday. The muted currently Justin Garcia. Who is your answer? Look at that. You're welcome. You are welcome.
Well, so when Camille started with KPJ, I get that's probably the number one guy that most people would mention because how good he's been for the Bucks, frankly, and that has been the biggest surprise of the second half. I mean, take everything off the court out of it because that certainly raised a lot of eyebrows when the trade happened. By the numbers, he was one of the more inefficient offensive players in the league this season, and that has not been the version of Kevin Porter Jr. that the Bucks have gotten. He's been a terrific defender as well. So I think he's the clear choice. I was going to say, okay, I'm not going to double up, so I'll go with Bobby Portis because I do think this is a Bobby Portis series. He was off to a good start last year until Game 4 happened, and no recovering from there. But I do wonder, and this tough for two of the biggest Brook Lopez defenders. I don't think this is.
I thought one of you were going to pick him. That's so interesting.
I don't think it's a good Brook Lopez series because
that is hilarious. So I've heard that a lot. Hilarious to me because I'm like, man, Brook Lopez is taking a lot of twos now, right? I'm not tripping. Like he's like that actually puts more fear in me. Like he's good at those. Well, and it's just like a change-up.
Yeah, I think where it kind of becomes interesting is we've seen the Bucks more and more willing to, and a lot of it was necessity, especially when they were down to just Giannis and Brook as the only bigs on the roster for 25 games. We've seen Doc willing to lean into Giannis at the 5 and playing much more switchable. And Brook Lopez, that's the one concern I think you have is that 2-man game and getting out in space against Tyrese Haliburton and other guards on the Pacers. So I do think Bobby Portis is going to be very important in this series to have another good showing here and give you some more of that mobility defensively, especially if he's hitting shots. But since Camille took both of those,
I was teeing you up with BP.
I'll keep it with the juniors, and I'll say Gary Trent Jr. because what he's brought defensively, he is a big gambler, but he's a tough defender. He's had some big moments for the Bucks, and more often than not this season, when there's a big moment, when there's a big shot, it's been Gary Trent Jr. that's hit that shot for the Bucks. So you're going to need that. You're going to need your role players to have some big ones. And I think the one thing that Bucks fans are kind of clinging to is, you know, if there's any team out there that is well overdue to have a role player that just shoots the lights out and way outperforms what his regular season numbers did in the playoffs, it's the Bucks. When you look at the teams that have victimized them the past 3 postseasons now, you got to go all the way back to Grayson Allen and his performance against the Bulls in the first round a couple of years ago, or Bryn Forbes outscoring Jimmy Butler in that first round series. So that's it. Other than that, Bucks have been victimized by a number of guys the past few postseasons. So it does feel like they're long overdue. And to me, Gary Trent Jr. is the guy that's most likely to be the guy of, hey, remember that series where Gary Trent Jr. did this, or that game where Gary Trent Jr. hit 7 threes?
Yeah, he would have had the shot against the Pacers this year had Tyrese not immediately responded with a tougher one. Yeah, he's made again, it feels like he hasn't missed against them this year. Those are all good answers. I think the Giannis plus the bench groups featuring everybody that you just said is going to be terrible. Yes. Like I keep saying this in my own show, but to say it again, the Bucks are on Central Time. So every time the Pacers game would end during this like seeding chase, I'm like, oh, let me go watch the Bucks and see what's happening. Oh, they're in a tight game in the fourth quarter. Oh, it's Giannis in the bench. Oh, Kevin Porter Jr. just went crazy and the Bucks won. I was like, this group is so good. What is this bench group?
It's funny because it's kind of been the same for us in that when you still had hope of catching the Pacers before the final 2 weeks of the regular season of maybe they can do it, we would keep our eye on Pacers games. And I know like we would have it on an iPad during the game broadcast in the arena of let's see where this is at. It's a close game. And then it would always be, how the hell did the Pacers win that game?
Yeah, they had quite the streak of like, I called them the escape artist Pacers for like 3 weeks because they just kept somehow finding a way to do it. It started with the Haliburton shot, and then they had a 1 against the Mavs, 2 against the Nets. It was great.
And the other guy I am very curious to see from a Bucks perspective. I'm curious who yours are for the Pacers, but I am very curious to see what Ryan Rollins looks like in his first taste of the postseason, because earlier in the season, everything we're saying about Kevin Porter Jr., that was Ryan Rollins. He was terrific, where it became the conversation of, man, the Bucks have to upgrade this guy because, I mean, granted, we saw this is probably the end of the line for him, but he thoroughly outplayed DeLon Wright earlier in the season, and he made himself be a part of that rotation. And then as soon as Kevin Porter Jr. arrived, kind of took a little bit of a step backward, and they've kind of traded off. That's been the thing that's benefited the Bucks, is if Rollins had a bad game, KPJ had a good game and vice versa. But he's a tough defender. He has great length. He has a near 7-foot wingspan, good lateral quickness. And he's another guy that's a very good spot up shooter, but he just has, for a young guy, a very like calming pace that he plays at. So I'm very curious to see what his first taste of playoffs looks like.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of good answers. Obviously, the Pacers have a couple guys that the Bucks know all too well can be X factors in this series. I'm very tempted to go with Aaron Nesmith because of who I am as a person, but the two that I would have at the top of the list would be my own answer and the fan base answer. My own answer is Myles Turner, because he shot it very well last year against the Bucks in the playoffs, and like, look, for all the reasons I think
in one of those games.
Yeah. I mean, for all the reasons Brook Lopez scares me a little bit if I'm the Pacers, like making him and his ground bound style move out to the perimeter to guard Myles and like not be around the basket to be where he's at his best protecting the rim is huge. And he's not going to go out as far if Myles can't make anything or is shot faking every time he catches for what reason or another. So Turner just making shots or being active and making quick decisions on offense, which he's gotten great at in this Haliburton system, is going to be very important in this series. He's got to keep it moving. He's got to be willing to shoot and score. He did a great job of that last year in all their series. My other one is Mathurin. I think that's the one the fan base would point to as well, just because it's both because it's a big question mark, but like the theory of it makes so much sense that this type of player is so valuable in these settings and is just hard to guard. And if he can play his game without subtracting from the Pacers style, right? That's been kind of the push and pull that they've had as their two parties for forever, is melding what Mathurin does well and the Pacers do well. The playoffs seem like the natural spot for that to go. He's been in a great mood. He cannot wait to play in the postseason. Like if he can be this, to use the fan base term, if he can be a dog on the offensive end and be that kind of ISO hard to guard scorer and is really locked in on defense, like that'd be huge. They need a bench wing who can do that kind of stuff so bad, but we've never seen him in the postseason. Like with Rollins, you just never know how this stuff is going to go for these guys.
Well, and the guy I'm also curious about on your side is Jarris Walker, because it feels like this is a Jarris Walker series.
I agree. So yesterday I said I did my questions about the series podcast, and I don't know if Jarris will be like in their top 8, but he is like the 9th guy that one would just, if they need to,
it may not start in the series when you get to game 2 or 3. It's like, okay,
they play a big role.
They're like, oh crap, we need an answer for this or that or that. Like Jarris is a lot of the like push that button. This guy can handle, and he's huge. And you might just need a tall person to like soak up reps guarding Giannis. You know what I mean? So yes, I also think Jarris could be an important X factor in this series. He's been red hot from 3 recently. Like you never know how reliable that's going to be in the playoffs, but I agree that he could also be one that everybody looks back and goes, oh, these 2 lottery picks were great for the Pacers and got it done. I don't care who goes first among you two, but give me your series predictions.
Bucks in 6. I'm feeling very confident.
The return of the Bucks in 6.
I'm feeling very confident about the Bucks' chances in this series, and it rests solely upon the shoulders of Giannis. I feel like the past few years we've been robbed of playoff Giannis. Giannis, when the lights are brighter, tends to up his play, and seeing the Bucks take on the Thunder in the NBA Cup game, which some people might say it's whatever, but that was a game with stakes that these players wanted to win. And Giannis, when he has something to play for, the way he can up his game is just amazing. And I feel like this is going to be the type of series for Giannis to remind national media and fans all around the world of who he really is. So I'm going Bucks in 6 in this series.
First of all, so none of us want to say Pat Connaughton as the X factor coming off a 43-point game.
43 doesn't mean anything in this time.
I do have a lot of confidence in the Bucks in this series. It is kind of cliche to pick 6, and especially since Camille just chose it. But I do feel like there's gonna be a lot of back and forth in this series. I would pick the Bucks in 7 in this one, and I said it at the top. My answer changed based on what the Bucks have started to do the past couple of weeks here and what they found with that second unit, and leaning into Giannis is basically going to play like Nikola Jokic, and that's the way forward for this group. I said for the longest time, going into the final couple of weeks, and I'm on an island here, I thought for a while the Bucks would be much better off playing the Knicks, even though they're 0-3 against the Knicks than the Pacers, because of how good Indiana's been in the back half of the year. And even the 3-1 record, I don't really take anything from that, because 2 of those games, as you mentioned, were when neither of these teams were very good. The Pacers were below 500 at that New Year's Eve loss. Bucks didn't really start to figure it out until late. So I do think it's really just the last 2 games that you can look at, which they split. And I think there's a lot of Bucks fans that just want the Pacers because they don't like Tyrese Haliburton and they want revenge for what happened last year. But there's a lot of optimism within Bucks fans, and I think it's going to be a lot tougher than a lot of fans are anticipating. But I still do think the Bucks are going to win. So I'll say the Bucks in 7.
They do have the best player. I will give the Pacers credit. Last year when they went 4-1 in the regular season against the Bucks, they said, nope, doesn't matter. It's the playoffs. It's different. This year when they went 1-3 against the Bucks, same thing, right? Like, I think they agree with you. And I think that the guys in and out the trade deadline suggests that, yeah, you probably should throw out a lot of what we saw in the regular season. Even those 2 games, like the Pacers in one game had the shot of their season, and the other game had their worst bench performance in like the last 5 years, basically. It's just really hard to take a ton from one game samples. Last year, I picked Pacers in 7, thinking Giannis would return during the series. This year, I'm also taking Pacers in 7 because Giannis is playing in the series. I just think they're a little better. That's just what it comes down to me. Even though the best player in the conference is their foe, and it's going to be extremely challenging to beat that guy.
They're deeper, and they have more proven guys that have gone through the playoffs. I think the big thing is the Bucks have Giannis, and then there's a lot of ifs, like if Kevin Porter Jr. looks like he did the last month of the season, if one of those guys gets hot, if Damian Lillard comes back, then I think you like the Bucks even more. But that's the big thing going into this series is the Bucks have more ifs than the Pacers do.
Yeah, I think they're going to be close games down the stretch as well. But
Agreed.
Yeah, I think the Bucks come out on top in this one.
I would be stunned if it's a short series either way.
Me too.
Completely stunned. Should be fun. I'm looking forward to it. But I have never seen the Pacers play the Bucks, so it's about time that we got to actually watch these teams on the hardwood. Did I do the math right? So they had 5 regular season games last year, and then 6 playoff games, and then 4 regular season games this year. So if this series goes 5+, they'll have played 20+ times in 2 seasons. That's crazy. That is crazy. I remember talking to Jordan Nwora. He said it's not a rivalry till we meet him in the playoffs. How about twice in a row, Jordan Nwora? How about that?
Here we are.
Everybody. You could find more from Camille and Justin at Locked On Bucks. Actually, I'll let you guys talk about what's coming on Locked On Bucks this week.
Oh, man. A lot of just gassing up the Bucks here and really stoking the flames of all the optimism that's going on. But no, I mean, really, the big thing for us, so we're going to get into some more predictions. We broke things down with Frank Madden on our most recent show, but more digging into some of the things we discussed here on our lead into the playoffs. But just a lot of Giannis, basically, that we're going to lean into because this is the first time we've seen him in 3 years in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's gonna be crazy. Same on my end. A lot of what the Pacers' advantages could be coming with the guest tomorrow. Game 1 preview Friday. Then we're off. I'm looking forward to it. I hope you all are too. Subscribe to Locked On Bucks and Locked On Pacers wherever you get your podcasts, or if you're watching us via video on YouTube. Thank you all for watching. We will see you very soon.